Alright, let's start. By the way, if you have any questions or clarifications regarding this lesson, please share it by the end of the class. Alright, so again, we're going to continue with our discussion about PHP. So I'm hoping everybody still got their knowledge intact with regards to HP. Wala taka klase last week, but hopefully it didn't mean that you've forgotten what we've discussed before, because since we're going to continue with the discussion, I'm expecting that you still have your knowledge with the previous lesson so that we can proceed with a new one. Okay, so conditional statement. Who can remember what conditional statement is all about? Who can share, perhaps? Unsa ka ba ang conditional statement? Anyone? I think we've discussed not. Okay, I'm pretty sure we discussed it back when you were still first year with C++. So who can remember what exactly are conditional statements, everyone? Anyone?
Katong if else, sir.
Go ahead, Baldado. Unsa lang day, Baldado?
For example, sir, katong if else statement.
That's correct. All right. So conditional statement is about, hold on. Conditional statement example ana is katong if and the else statement. So we're going to learn more about it, and I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with how it works, diba? The if and else statement. And another conditional statement is also the switch statement. So I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with those, so it wouldn't be very hard for me to discuss today. So again, this is going to be our lesson number 10, PHP Conditional Statement. And we will start by discussing what exactly that is. Very often when you write code, you want to perform different actions for different conditions. You can use conditional statements in your code to do this. So, Marashad, if we're going to go back to our discussion about flowcharts, that the conditional statement actually decides ug asa padulong ang flow sa imong program, di ba? Ug asa padulong ang flow sa imong program, whether or not the condition is true or false. So, for you to decide how are you going to arrange or how are you going to create different flows in your program, you're going to create a condition in which if those condition is met, if true ang condition, a certain functionalities will be performed. If it's false, a certain functionalities will also be performed. Okay, so in PHP we have the following conditional statements. We have the if statement. It executes some code if one condition is true, and then we have if else statement. It executes some code if a condition is true, and another code if the condition is false. So if we're going to compare the if and else, the if statement will be the if statement will be executed if the statement is true, and else if the statement or the condition is false. All right. However, we have if, else, if, and else statement. It executes different codes for more than two conditions. So if there are two conditions that needs to be met, not just true or false, but maybe true, 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 and one false, then we will use if, else, if statement. And then lastly, we will use switch statement. Basically, it is used to select one of many blocks of code to be executed. So I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with this. So let's get along with the how we're going to write it in PHP syntax. So basically here it is. The if statement executes some code if one condition is true. So same thing, similar gyapon siya sa C++ before. We write the
Morning, sir.
morning. We will write the word if, and then we will set the condition enclosed with parentheses, and then the codes to be executed will be enclosed by curly brackets. Is it the same? Parehara ba siya sa C++ before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So we will try that. We will start with the if statement. Again, the if statement will execute the code if the statement is true. Only if it is true. Diba? So just remember that. Let's open up our text editor here. Hold on. Kadali lang sa isa. Wala ko na paangay. Hold on.
Sir.
Ay, wala. Wala ga share screen. Sorry.
Na mo kita, sir, nga. Kasi sa uban ra ba, sir, ganun.
Wala jud ay. Grabe po. So, kuslag ka-inform ay. Alright, anyway, kana makita ng screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright, my apologies. Wala mo kaingon nga wala day ko screen di ay. Alright, anyway, we'll go on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will start our exam. So right now we're only be needing the Apache. We don't necessarily need the MySQL. So alright, so it's ready. So first is we're going to start with the if statement. Okay, so if that's the case, let me just show you. Let me run through with my presentation real quick before we proceed. Okay, so para if you're taking notes, you can write it down. So again, PHP conditional statements. Basically, it composed of the following conditional statements. We have if else, and then if else, and then switch. So again, the if statement will be used, or basically it will execute some code if one condition is true. So again, the if statement will only be executed if the condition is true, only if it is true. The if else, basically it will execute the codes if the statement is true, that is for the if, and then the code will be executed if the statement is false using the else. Alright, and then if else statement, so basically if it is true, this is also another true, and this is false. And then switch statement, basically it selects one of many blocks of code to be executed. So anyway, allow me to show it to you again. Wala may ni join si Ja. Alright, it's okay. Please inform Janet to join in again. Okay, wala man display dire. Alright, so again, if the if statement executes some code if one condition is true. So we have here, basically it's the same thing on how we write it using C++. We write the word if, and then we set the condition inside a quotation mark, and then code to be executed if the condition is true. Basically, it is written inside the code block, and it is enclosed with curly brackets. So pretty much it's the same with C++. So we will try this. We're going to create a simple PHP program that will determine whether or not one statement or whether or not this condition is true, and then the code will be executed. So let me open up my text editor now. Here it is. Let's create a new file. Let's call it if statement.php. Alright, and then we will write the basic structure of an HTML file, and then let's create a title, if statement. Alright, so let's try. We'll start with a PHP opening tag, and then alright, so we will try to create a PHP program that will determine whether or not a condition is true. So let's start by writing a variable. So let's say we have a variable a and it's equals to 10. We're going to give it a value of 10, and then we have variable b, and let's give it let's give it, let's say 14. Gamay lang, 5. Alright, so we're going to create an if statement. So we'll write if, and then we'll set the condition. So let's say is a is greater than b, and then the condition or the code will be written inside the curly brackets. So once mong ganahan may tabo, if this statement is true, you're going to write it inside the bracket. So let's say, so every time nga if tinuod nga ang a is greater than b, it will display a message. So we'll use the echo function, and then let's say a is greater than b. Alright, so do you think this is true? Do you think this statement is true? Is a greater than b?
Yes, sir.
Alright, it's because a is 10 and then b is 5, so obviously 10 is greater than 5. So we can expect that in this statement, or this condition is true, therefore this statement should be executed. Let's try. Let's save this and let's open up Google, our browser, and let's try to check. Let's go to localhost. In my case, it's in ITS 306, and then discussion. And then if statement.php discussions. All right, here it is. So the code is executed. It says here A is greater than B because 10 is indeed greater than 5, and that is the condition that we set. All right. What if we're going to change it to, let's say, 15? Is it true? Is A or is 10 greater than 15?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. So what do you think will happen? Unsa siguro mahitabo?
Error, sir.
Okay, let's check. Let's save that and let's reload. All right. So it's not showing any error, but it's not showing anything because the statement is true. The statement is false. Therefore, nothing will be executed. So what do you think we should do? Para since since the condition is false, unsa na to nga somehow mo display siya of anything. How are we going to make it better, the program? What do you think are we going to do? Okay, right now since the statement is false and it's not showing anything. Huh?
Gamit ang else statement.
That's correct. All right. That means we're going to work with an else statement for us to be able to basically just to make the program better. Okay. We'll work on it later on, but for the meantime, let's continue with other examples. We'll add else statement in just a moment. All right. So let's add another example here. So let's say dr. That will give us a break line. All right, let's add another PHP tag here. And this time, we're going to create a program that will determine if, basically it will greet us or muhatag siya statement every time, depending on the time of the day. All right. So basically, if it's from 8 p.m. in the morning, before 8 p.m. then it will say have a good day. So any time na before 8 p.m., that means from 1 in the morning up until 7:59, it will say have a good day. All right, so we'll try to do that. And to do so, we're going to use a PHP function, which is the date function. So what exactly that is, allow me to show it to you first. So we'll create a variable here. Let's call it time. And then let's use the PHP function date, and let's use this. Now, all right. So date is a PHP function that will determine, basically that will use the timestamp. Murabak ang oras nga nakasave sa imong computer. Basically, it will use it and then display it on your on the screen. Basically, that's how it is. So basically, the date function will determine the date. Alright, but not just date, but that also includes the time, the date, the month, the year, whatever it is. I'm going to show you more about date function, but right now, this right here, the capital letter H, this is this is an example of this shows the time. Shows the time. For example, it's 8 o'clock. So basically, capital letter H represents the o'clock. Murabag, kung ang oras is 8 or 9:24, then the letter H represents 9. Alright? So example, 9:24 For example, right now it's 9:24. The H stands for 9 o'clock. Alright, I'm going to show more about the date function later on, but just to give you a hint, capital letter H represents the hour. Right? Again, if it's 9:24, then H stands for 9. Alright? Nagets ra? Okay, I'll show more about it later on. So, right now, we're going to create a condition that says if it's before 8 o'clock in the evening, it will say have a good day. So, we'll create a condition here if, and then a variable time is less than 20. What is 20? By the way, if oras, 20 is 8 o'clock. That's right. Okay. So basically, we're creating a condition that says every time that is before 8 o'clock, it will say, have a good day. Good day. Alright. So since right now it's still 9:26, so this statement should be true. Correct? Correct ba? Since right now it's 9 o'clock, so this statement should be true because our condition here is less than 20 man, and 9 is less than 20. So therefore, this statement should be executed. So let's try. Let's reload. Okay, it says here, have a good day. Alright, what about if go on na? Alright, allow me to show you na lang the different date functions. So let's open up Google and then let's go to W3 schools and then PHP. And then let's look for the date. Date. Dara. Alright. And then here it is. So this is the ang mga values sa atong date. For example, we have here the day. If it's gonna be small letter D, it's gonna be the day of the month. So from 01 to 31. So it's small letter D. For example, right now is 5/27, May 27. So if you wanna display the word, or if you wanna display 27, then you will use letter D. Alright, so let's try that. Let's try na lang before we proceed. Let's create another PHP file here, or PHP tag. And then we will just try to make use of it. So echo and then date. So for example, if we're going to write D, then it will display the date of the date for today. So let's try that. Okay, it says here 27. Let me add a break line. This is very useful, by the way. This the date function is very useful. So right now it shows 27 because again D, small letter D, is the day of the month. So that is 0 from 1 to 31. Now capital letter D, a textual representation of the day, the first 3 letters. So right now, since today is Friday, if we're going to write capital D, it will display Fri, the first 3 letters of Friday. So let's try that. Let's try to write it. Let's try to write down. So if we're going to say capital letter D, and then and then comma, we're going to reload that, then it will say Fri and then 27. Alright, so let's have another example. If it's okay, what if we want to display ganahan kong i-display on maingon siya nga today is Friday. Today's Friday, May 27, 2022. Yung oras, which is 9:29 p.m. So we will try to display this. So first is we will write the word today is. So today is. And then since letter D will only display the first 3 letters, let's try to find the function that will display all the letters of the day. So let's try that. Pangitaon sa natog asaron. Wala ako ka-memorize ani, so please spare me. Alright, so we have here lowercase l. So we should display, we should write L. That is the name, the full textual representation of the day. And then May 27. So we'll start with May. So we will look for the month, the textual representation of a month, which is full capital letter F. All right. So capital letter F, and then 27. 27 is letter D, and then let's add TH, and then lowercase d, di, and then the year, which is capital letter Y. Capital letter Y, and then the time, the number of days. So we have H, small letter H, and then colon, and then the minute, I. And then the PM or AM, let's look for it. And then capital letter A. Alright, so let's save that and let's reload. Let's see how it looks like. Uy, sayop na yung nabutang. So today is, so dapat letter L. Friday, May. Ilahin na lang nato ang today is. Nasa daghang error. Alright. So right now it shows Friday, May 27, 2022, 3:32 a.m. So depending on how are you going to write your date, you just have to look for the date functions right here. Okay? Nagets ra ba?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So anyway, with that being said, let's proceed. So since, okay, let me just remove it right here. Right, since we've written letter H, so again that is the number representation of of the hour. So again, if it's 9:24, then H stands for the 9 o'clock. All right, so let's have another example for the if statement. Okay, so in this example, it will display, or basically it will execute a statement if the if siguro magamit ni siya every time nga gamata og system or a program, and then if a new user is detected, it will display welcome, and then we are glad you could join us. So let's create a new variable. Let's call it new user, and if it's true, this is example of a boolean data type. So the true here, dili ni siya word nga true, but this is just an actual value, a boolean value of a boolean value, which is true, meaning if it's really a new user, if it's this statement, this variable is true, then that's it. Okay, so let's try that. We're going to create a condition that says if there is a new user, it will display echo and then H1 welcome H1, and then let's have another line here. We are glad you could join us. Alright, so again, this is an example of a Boolean data type, and true or false, diba? Ang Boolean is true or false naman na. Therefore, if this condition is true, then this will be executed. So let's try to reload. Oops, semicolon. Alright, it says here, welcome, we are glad you could join us. So again, that is for the if statement. The if statement will only be executed if the statement is true. So again, how are we going to make sure that our website is going to be a little bit better if the statement are false? So giansira na ni Ms. Kadasali gaina, we will use another function, which is the if else, or basically the else statement. So we already know that the if statement will be executed if the condition is true. The else will be executed if this condition is false. Alright, so let's go back to our example. Here, let's start with the first one. So what if this condition is false? Then we will write an else below the if, and let's say echo A is less than B. Alright, so notice nga wala na tayong create of condition. Again, the else will automatically be applied if the first condition is false. So again, dili na ta kinahanglan mo add og another condition sa atong else. You just have to write else directly and then the statement. Let's save that and let's reload. Here, it says here A is less than B. It's because 10 is less than 15. Do you follow? Okay, so here in the second one, we'll create another. We're going to create an else statement. That means if this condition is false. So we'll say, have a good night. So for example, we're going to let's just change it, since we cannot change the time. So we'll just change our condition. If it's greater than 20, that means if it's if yeah, if it's greater than 20, then it will display have a good night. However, we cannot do that. It's because it's 9 o'clock in the it's 9 o'clock man, di pa man rin more than 20. So however, we cannot test whether or not this will work. However, maybe if we're going to run it tonight, then it will display have a good night. And then same here, we're going to create another an else statement. So we'll say else, and then it will say echo, for example, let's just say please try again. So that is if we're going to change it to false, meaning the statement is no longer true, then it will display please try again. Sige kalimtan ang semicolon. Alright. Okay, do you have any questions so far with the else, the if and the else?
Wala, sir.
Alright.
Wala, sir.
Okay, so let's proceed to the next, which is the if else statement, or else if rather statement. So the if else statement executes different code for more than two conditions. So sa atong previous atong example kay na, it's very pretty for it's very kanang sayon na siya kayo because there are only two options. We have one condition and then we determine whether or not that condition is true or false. However, what if we're going to work with conditions that we're going to work with multiple conditions. If daghan nga condition, then we will use else if. That means there are two or more, or one or more possible conditions ba that could be true. So that means we can use the else if statement. So this is how we're going to write it. Same thing, we have if condition, and then the statement will be written inside the quotation, then else if. So for example, if the A statement is false, but na-lying option, so we're going to create an else if, and then we'll set another condition to put. So again, if there are more than two conditions to be worked on, two or more conditions, we will use the else if. However, if all of the conditions are false, that's the time that the else will be executed. Now question, kapila ta pwede mo add og else if? Can we add more than one else if?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's true. We can add more than one else if. I'm not sure if may limit, but I don't think there is any limit. As long as if ganahan kang butangan nimo og daghan king conditions, then that's okay. There are no limits as to how many else if you're going to add. So let's try that. Let's open up our text editor. Let's create a new file. Let's call it else if state. Sorry. If if else statement .php. So same thing, we're going to write the basic HTML structure. We'll call it else if and else statements. So we'll create another a PHP tag method, and then let's start by writing variables. So just to continue with what we've been working a while ago, let's create a variable a. Let's give it 10, and then variable b. Let's give it uh, 10. Okay, so we have both two variables that have the same value. So we're going to create a condition. So if variable a is greater than variable b, then it will display echo a is greater than b. However, so that's the time that we're going to create we're going to add an else if a, hold on, if a is less than b, then it will display a is less than b. However, if both of this statement is false, for example, if ang a is greater than b is false and then a is less than b is false, then we'll write an else, meaning what na lang option, the else will be executed. It will display a is equal to b. Alright? So based on the variable that we set, which of these statements will be executed? Is it
Else,
gonna be
sir.
the if? I'm sorry, ang salan di ay?
Else.
Okay. I'm sensing that I only have Miss Rachel as my student here. Ay, madungog na ba ko sa uban? Pero si Rachel ang estudyante.
Sure.
Alright, anyway,
Sure.
let's save that and let's reload.
Don't worry, sir.
Else, so let's say if, and then else if, and then else underscore statement dot php, and it will say a is equal to b. That is because both both the if and else if statements are false, therefore the else will be executed. Okay, so what if, let's change it a little bit. Let's say kani mahimo siyang 100. Now if we change the value of variable a to 100, which of these statements will be executed? Asa siguro? Anyone? if we change the value of our variable to 100, which of these statements will be executed?
If, sir.
All right. So I guess you get the idea, diba? So if based on the condition that you set, if the if statement is false, then it will try to check on the else if. But if the else if is still false, we'll try to check if naapailaan yung else if. But if all the if statement are false, then the else will be executed. So basically, that is how. Let's have another example na lang. Okay, let's have another example. Let's create another HTML PHP tag here. So going back to itong example kaya about sa date. So let's create a variable time and then date, capital H, that is the hour. So if variable time is less than 10, meaning if it's gonna be 10 or below, 10 o'clock or below, it will say have a good morning. However, if the time is less than 20 and below, that means 8 o'clock or from 11 to 8 o'clock, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., it will display have a good evening. Have a good day na lang. Have a good day. And then lastly, if it's gonna be beyond 8 o'clock, then we will write else and it will display have a good night. Alright, so again, we've created a condition here. We've created conditions here that if it's gonna be less than 10 a.m., it will display have a good morning. If it's gonna be less than 8 p.m., it will display have a good day. And if it's gonna be anytime beyond 8 o'clock in the evening, it will display have a good night. So we'll try to check that. Let's reload, and obviously it will display have a good morning since it's still 9:47. So it's still less than 10. Okay, so that's it. Right, let's proceed. We have the nested if statement. So kinsay makinumdum siguro how exactly is the nested if statement works. Unsa pasabot og nested? This is just a review since we've already discussed it before. What do you mean by nested statement? Anyone? Kinsa makinumdum? Kuanra in your own idea. Naa natay definition diri sa presentation, but in your own idea, what exactly is a nested? How does it work? Ngawas klase eh. Anyone? Okay, anyway, a nested if statement is an if statement placed inside another if statement. So that's it. So it's an if statement inside another if statement. Nested if statement are often used when you test a combination of conditions before deciding on the proper action. So mura siya, if the condition is true, pero naapadjay nga option, napadjay nga condition or combination of multiple true conditions. So that is the time that we're going to create a nested statement. So hold on, let me open that up. So let's open up our text editor. Let's create a new file. Let's call it nested if statement.php. Change the title to nested if statement. Alright, so basically, it will allow you to add more condition if the statement is already true. But about since ang condition is already true, but you need to add more conditions to it. But the first statement is already true. Alright, so for example, kani ma-experience natin if we working on a user-based na websites. So we'll create a variable name user, and let's say it's a new user. So we have user, and then the value is new, meaning it's a new user. And then we're going to create another variable. Let's call it user type, and let's give it, let's say, admin. All right. So we have here a new user, and that new user is an admin because na may laing user. It could be either public user, so on and so forth. So again, we have a new person to be added in our website. This is a new user, and he's going to be an admin. All right. So there, meaning you can have multiple condition. You can set multiple combination of conditions. All right. So let's try if, let's say, is the user new? If it's new, then let's check if unsa siya nga type na user. Alright? So again, this will be executed only if this condition is true. So we'll create another if. So again, this is a nested if because it's an if statement inside an if. So let's set user type is equals to admin. And then we'll create the function here. We will say welcome new admin user. Okay. However, if new user siya pero dili siya admin, then we will create an else statement here that will be executed if the new user is not an admin. So it will display echo welcome new user. Ana lang. So again, this statement, kaning nested nga if statement will only be executed if this condition is true. That means if the user is indeed new. And then after niya na check o new ang estudyante, now will new user, this time it will check whether or not if it's gonna be an admin or public. Right? If it's gonna be an admin, it will display welcome new admin user, but if it's public, it will display welcome new user only. However, if it's not new and it's not admin, we'll create an else statement here that says welcome existing user. So let's just try that. So for the meantime, we've set the variable is user. The variable user is new, and then user type is admin. So we can expect that the if statement is true, and then this time it will check the following nested if. Iyang i-check og asa anin duha ang iyang execute. Do you follow?
Sir.
Okay, so let's try nested if statement.php. It will display welcome new admin user. It's because the user is new and the user type is admin. Alright? However, if we will say we'll change it to that user type to, let's say, public. So is the first if statement will be executed? Execute ba ang first nga condition? Kani akong gi-highlight. Is this going to be executed? Anyone? Okay, again, the user is new, user type is public. The first condition, if user is equals to new, is it going to be executed? Guys?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dugaya. Uy, dugay makatubag. Alright, of course, yes, it's because we've set that the user is new. Alright? Now, since this condition is true, therefore, it will check the nested if. So again, the nested if will only be executed if the first condition is true. Now, for the nested condition, we have here user type is admin. Is it going to be executed? Kani? I-execute ba siya or dili?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
It's because we changed the user
No.
type to public. So, asa siguro ang iyang i-execute ani? Asa ang iyang i-execute?
First, sir. Kanang first.
Pero first, you're gonna welcome to new admin user.
Okay, let's try it again.
Welcome
Sa
new.
first condition, true ni siya, di ba? Because new, di ba? Sa atong user is new. So, iyang gi-check ang atong nested if. Now, it says here that the user type is admin. Kani, i-execute ba ni or dili?
I-execute,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Dili.
Ha?
Dili, sir.
Who says yes? Okay.
Ako, sir.
Take note that the user type is public. Alright? Therefore, this is going to be false. Kaya atong giset diri public naman. So the user type is public and the condition here is admin.
Sir.
So therefore, this will not be executed because false man siya. Because again sa atong variable nga giset, user type is public man. And then here the user type sa condition is user type admin. Nagets niyo? Therefore, iyang i-execute
Yes,
ang else
Sir.
instead. Okay? So we have here new and then public. So even if this statement is true, but this time here sa sulod sa nested if dili na siya true, nahimo siyang false. So therefore, iyahang i-execute ang else. Let's check that. Let's save. Let's reload. Okay. Hold on. Problema ra ni kay dugay mo load. Ma-clear ka sa ko ha kay usahay problema sa XAMPP and pili niya i-load ang previous ang new date settings asa ron ang cache. Okay, wala pa dyan. But anyway, supposedly, ang yang i-display is ang welcome new user because the user type is now admin instead of the public instead of admin. However, if the user is old, okay, so therefore the if statement is no longer true. Therefore, it should display the else statement, which is welcome existing user. Let's try. Okay, may problema ron kay dili lagi na sa if statement. Control R. Right. I think there's a problem with my my apologies, but I guess you get the idea, diba? Because again, the nested if statement will only be executed if the first condition is true, and then you can add more else. You can still add else if, so on and so forth. Same case with how you're going to write it. Katong gaina, katong discuss. Right? Do you have any questions with the nested if statement?
Lang, sir.
All right. So basically, this is how it's gonna look like. So, for example, we have here a variable user new, and then user type is admin, and then if user is new, then it will display, and then it will check whether it's admin or not. If it's admin, it will display welcome new admin. But if it's false, then it will display welcome new user. But if the variable user is anything other than new, then it will display welcome all user. All right. So next, let's proceed with the switch statement. I'm sorry. Do you have any question before we proceed to the next topic with the if else statement? Nagets ra ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think anong dili man nimo change. Let's try that. Madouble. Naranigana na siya. So just in case if maka experience mo ginaning errors, so instead of using one equal sign, first is you're going to try to clear cache your browser, or you can use Control R, Control Reload, or Control F5. If not, that doesn't work, try to change the kanang mga equal sign to double equal sign na lang, ana na lang, para magana. So let's try again. So let's try new. So let's reload. It should display welcome new user. Here it is. Nagana na siya. Anyway, let's proceed to the switch statement. The switch statement is used to perform different actions based on different conditions. So the difference between switch and if statement, although same sila og basically they are conditional statements, but the if else statement will matter if the statement is true or false. Diba? Ang if o else statement mo work siya if the condition that being set are true or false. Mo na mo question rin siya if whether the condition is true, then the if will be executed. If false, then the else will be executed. The switch statement, however, will be executed by comparing what is the label. Here it is, label, and the value. Murabag i-compare niya ang label to the value, and then it will I'm sorry. It will try to compare the condition that you set and then the label. If match siya, then it will execute whatever code that you've written. So again, ang if and else statement will be working by comparing or by analyzing whether the value is true or false. The switch statement will work by analyzing it, or by comparing the value and the label. What exactly is label and what is let's talk more about it. But again, that's it. That's the difference between them. The if else statement will work by determining whether if it's true or false, whether the condition is true or false. Then the switch statement will work by comparing the condition and the label. Okay, so this is how you're going to write it. You're going to write the word switch and then the condition, and then open curly brackets. Basically, that's it. And then for the first case, we'll write case, and then whatever it is the value of your label, and then the code, and then break. We will write break. The reason why, if we're not going to add break, it will try to continue. Basically, we will check on it later on. But basically, this is how we're going to write it. We will write the word switch, and then the condition, and then the case, and then the execution. All right. So let's try that. I'm not sure if it makes sense, but hopefully this time it will. We'll create a program here. We'll create a new file. Let's call it switch statement.php. Let's call it switch statement, and our PHP tag. Paspasan nato ni guys ha, kay arong maumanta. Okay, there are only a few weeks left. Alright, so we'll create a variable here, let's say today, variable today, and it is going to determine the date for today. So ang D, unsa lang gitong letter D nga capital letter D, Let's go back to the PHP function. Capital letter D is a textual representation of the day, which is 3 letters. So today is Friday, then it should detect fry, F-R-I. Get it? Gets that? So again,
Yes, sir.
we're going to
Yes,
check
sir.
the date for today, and we're going to check it in the format of FRI, Friday, meaning that is the first 3 letters of the date for today. So we're going to create a switch function. So meaning it will check ug unsa ron nga adlaw, and then depending on what day is it today, we're going to create the switch function or switch statement. So of course we will write here switch and then today, and then let's start our first case. So if case kung ma-match niya is MON, that is Monday. So again, we have the first case MON. If ang ma-match gani ang makuha diri gani is MON, so we'll write case and then open a double quotation mark and then colon. This time it's no longer semicolon but colon, and it will let's so basically if makita niya nga today is MON, it will display today is Monday. All right, so that's just it. And then to make sure that it will stop, para mo-stop siya, dire-ra siya kutob, we will use the function break. That means this will determine that for this case, dire-ra kutob ang iyahang execution. Ang iyang code nga iyang execute if the case is MON. Alright, let's have another case. However, if it will display TUE, that is Tuesday, it will display today is Tuesday. And then, of course, break it. That means it will be the end of that case. So let's have another case. What if it will display Wed? That is Wednesday. Diba? Basing natingala mo nga nung MONTUE Wed, because again, we use the capital letter D, which implies the first 3 letters of the day. If it's Monday, MON, Tuesday, TUE. Nagets naman na, diba?
Yes, sir.
Alright, and then echo, it will say today is Wednesday. And then break. Again, every case you're going to write break. It's because notice nga same siya og nabilong siya og usa ka quotation text block. Nakabutang siya og similar nga inside the same curly brackets. So basically, all of these cases will work as one. If wala na ko ang break, tanan mo load. So we're going to add break para dili siya mo continue checking on the next case. Alright, and then let's have another case again. And this time, if it detects Thursday, so THU, and then colon, and then echo, today is Thursday. And then break, and then if it's Friday, case, and then FRI, echo, today is Friday, and then break, and then case, case Saturday, so that is SAT. It will display echo, today is Saturday, and then break, and then lastly case Sunday. Again, after the case, dili siya semicolon but colon. Okay, today is Sunday. Alright, and then break. So we've created 7 cases. That is one for each day, day of the week. And then, however, just in case, nara dyan mga instances nga none of this will match on the value. So what would be, kumbaga, ang else natong if none of these cases will match, what would be iyang default nga value? So, of course, we will write the word default just in case none will match, none of the cases will match, then we will write a default and echo, let's say, please, in may akong butang, please check your date. Kung na lang, let's say, no information available. Ano lang. And then semicolon, and then of course, break. Okay, so let's review. Again, we set a variable. We use the PHP date for letter D, capital letter D. That is going to be the first 3 letters of the day, of the week. So that is our variable. Now, we're going to create a switch statement that determines what would be the value. Unsay ma-match sa ato ang to the value of the variable today. So if mo match siya og Monday, it will display today is Monday, and so on and so forth. So we write it by writing the word case followed by the label ug unsay mo match, what we are expecting to match it with, and then colon, and then your execution. In this case, we only execute we've only written an echo, simple echo statement, and then if mahumana ka sa imong statement, you will have to break it because without the break, it will continue checking on the rest of the cases. Alright? And then if you're done with the cases and you want to set a default value, if none of these cases will be matched, then you will write a default function, and then you can write what would happen if none of the cases match. Alright? So let's check that. Let's see, and then let's rename this to switch statement.php. Okay, it says here today is Friday because it matched. Since today is indeed Friday, it matched this. All right. Do you have any question? Nagets ra? Do you follow? Am I talking too fast? Am I being too fast with the discussion? Anyone? Dahan, sukar gay na wala ko question na karon. Nana lang, sir. Alright. Let's proceed. Again, paspasan na to ni arong next time magtuma na taog. Let's continue working on our website. Next is nested switch statement. So same with the conditional state, same with the if statement, we can also create nested switch statement. So to put it simply, a nested switch statement is a switch statement within a switch statement. This is used when there are more choices to choose from after the initial choice is made. Okay, let's create an example here. I'm just going to copy and paste it para madali. Let's create a new file. Let's call it nested switch statement.php. Let's call it nested switch statements. Alright, so I'm just going to copy and akong gi-prepare nga class, akong gi-prepare before para madali ta, and I'm going to explain it to you one by one, line by line. Here it is. So first is we've created a variable, 2 variables. First is the variable car, that is, the value is Hyundai, and then the model is Tucson. So we have 2 variables here. We have the car, which is the brand. Let's call it Hyundai, and then model is Tucson. And then we created our switch statement. So first is we want to check which unsa ang match nga car. So we have 2 switch statements, 2 cases here. We have Honda and Hyundai. All right. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to compare if the if the car matches on our first case. So, no first case is Honda. Ni-match ba siya? Ni-match ba siya sa atong first case?
No.
No, because the car here is Hyundai. So, if that's the case, if that's the case, no pun intended, it will check on the second case, which is Hyundai. Ni-match na ba siya? This time, ni-match na ba siya sa second nga case?
Much, sir.
Okay, ni-match na siya. So, therefore, since the first case is matched, it will check the nested switch statement na po. Yan na po i-check dere for the second variable, which is model. So, it says here, for the first case for the model, we have Tucson. Ni-match ba siya dere? Ni-match ba?
Yes, sir.
Ni-match. Therefore, it will display echo, the Hyundai Tucson price is blah blah blah, and then break. Okay? However, if wala siya ni-match, then it will continue checking on the second case, which is accent. And then, actually, wala na akong nabutag default. Let me add a default value para in case of wala. So, let's say default. And then, no information available. Then break. Alright, so let's do the same thing here. And then here. Alright, so let's try to check it. Let's add nested at the top. So it says here Hyundai Tucson price is 1.3, so on. Alright, so that is because it first checked the first case, which is, so first case Honda, it didn't match, so it proceeded to the second case, Hyundai. Of course, that matched. So it checked the switch statements inside the case Hyundai, and then same thing, it proceeded with checking for the model. We have Tucson and accent, and then so on. Alright, so let's try to change this. Let's set it to Honda, and then the model is City. Okay, so first is it's gonna check the case. So in this, since ni-match siya dire, it will check for the nested switch statement, and then it will compare on the different cases in that nested switch. So first, it's gonna check the first case. Right now it says Civic, so it didn't. Obviously, it will not match. It will proceed to the next, which is City. Then of course it will display Honda price is so on. Let's reload. Let's save that. Just like that. Honda City price is okay. What if, let's say, himo na to ning Ford? What do you think will happen? Is it going to match here? Mo-match ba siya dire?
Wala, sir.
No. How about this? Mo-match ba po siya dire?
Wala, sir.
Dili gyapon. So what will happen? Unsa siguro may tabo? Okay, it will proceed to our default. Wala na ibutag default.
Wala nitong default, sir.
Alright. So it will display here no information available. So let's try to reload. Let's save that. Alright, it says here no information available. Alright, nagets ra ang nested and the nested switch statement. Nagets ra ba jud?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So I'd like to stop here. Ganan ko mo end na dire. However, again, we'll try to discuss all the necessary discussion lesson para next meeting we'll focus more on creating or adding functionalities on our website, because we only have, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks left, or 2 to 3 weeks left. So would that be okay, guys? We'll continue with the new topic, loops. We'll just continue, guys, okay? Dalion rin nato ang loops rep. I'm not going to discuss it thoroughly because again, you can always study it yourself. At least I can introduce you with the topic para unya if mag-add na tag functionalities sa ang website, dili na mo maglisod. Would that be okay, everyone? Paminaw ra mo diya eh. Alright, later on I will give you an assessment activity
Okay.
and assignment.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you guys. Alright, so let's proceed. Wala ko ka-prepare of presentation for the loops. So I'm just going to use my reference, which is the W3 schools, and then we're just going to discuss it right here. And we're going to try some examples on how we're going to use it. Or basically, we're just going to try some examples. Okay, so again, I'm not going to discuss it thoroughly. I'm just going to introduce it to you. Anyway, once if mo work na ta og adding functionalities from website, and if maka-experience ta nga mo gamit ta og loops, then I'm just going to explain it to you as well. So our next topic would be PHP loops. So if you want to learn it yourself as well, just go to w3schools.com, go to PHP, and then look for PHP loops. So there are several PHP loops. We have while, do while, for loop, for each, break, and continue. I'm just going to introduce to you each one of them, and then perhaps I'm not really going to explain it thoroughly. I just want to introduce it to you, and then you can continue studying it on your own. So PHP loops. Often when you write code, you want the same block of code to run over and over again a certain number of times. So instead of adding several almost equal code lines in the script, we can use loops. So loops are useful if we are going to create we're going to create functionalities na magbalik-balik ra ba. So if naay mga instances, especially this is useful if you're going to create a website nga makuha ka og data gikan sa database, di ba? So you don't necessarily have to check to get the information on your database one by one. For example, naa kay list of students. So first is you're going to check student number 1. Then you're going to add student number 2, student number 3. So if you're just going to add them one by one in your website, madugay ka because magsige kag paste, magsige ka og manual code. Inana ba? For example, again, let me clarify my example. Na kay website, mugama ka og website nga mo display og list of students nga naka-enroll sa subject. So you can add them by adding them one by one on your website. Pwede mo siyang i-add one by one, but that will consume a lot of time. So therefore, we are going to use loops. That means it will just continually add every time nga naay information nga i-add sa database, automatic na siyang mo add sa imong website. Then, because you don't necessarily have to write the code repeatedly, we're just going to command your program to repeat the code by itself so that automatic siya mo get information from the database. So that is just an example of how PHP loop works. So again, this is useful if you don't want to run over and over again a certain number of times. Murabag, para di ka magbalik-balik og write sa code, you're going to use loop. So one example for that would be kani localhost kani sa atong e-commerce nga website. Let me show to you and kanus mo gana ang loops. For example, ni-create na taog website, kani naana ni siya functionality, and this one right here. Notice kani mga sapatos. Now, kani mga sapatos nakasave siya sa atong database, right? Now, for example, there are several different shoes here, and if ako ra siya i-display manually sa akong website, I have to add this specific shoes manually, and then I have to add this specific shoes manually na pod. Barabag, ug unsa akong gigamit nga code diri, gamiton na po nako code diri para ra jud makuha na ako ni sapatosa, and then same thing here. Notice that all of these are similar maning information. This is coming from the database. So it would be very impractical if binagsaon ako siya kuha gikan sa database and add it to my website. Right? So therefore, I'm going to use a loop, PHP loop, to automatically get all of those shoes nga nakasave sa ako ang database, and it will automatically display it here in my screen. So that is where loops are useful. if you don't want to repeatedly use the same line of code over and over again. Nagets niyo yung idea when to use loops? Gamiton na tong loop kung dili taga na magbalik-balik o gamit og code. Similar nga code.
Yes, sir.
Do you get it? Alright. Okay, that's good. Let's proceed. Loops are used to execute. Okay, let me zoom it in. Loops are used to execute the same block of code again and again as long as a certain condition is true. So same thing. The loops na gyapon siya condition because for example here sa tuang website. Kani if na ako'y 1,000 shoes sa akong database and ganahan ko nga i-display ra ang tanang nga mga Nike shoes. So that is already condition. So if wala condition, all of the shoes will be displayed. Tanang mga shoes nga nakabutang sa akong database, whether or not if it's for women, for men, for kids, regardless of the brand, diba? That's why we added sidebar here so that we can filter it out. And those filter would be the condition. So for example, in this case, we're only going to display all the shoes that are, let's say, Nike shoes. Nike men's shoes. Tanan ra nga mga men's shoes di ay rather. And then if we're going to use this sidebar right here, we can filter it out by displaying all Nike only Adidas, only Jordan, so on and so forth. So those are example of condition. So it will not display the entire, all of the details or all of the data, but we can set conditions so that it will only limit as to how many information, how many data are we going to use. Something like that. So in PHP, we have the following loop types. So we have the while loop. Loops through a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. So that is a while loop. It will automatically repeat the execution if the condition that you set remains true. If true ra gyud siya, then the while loop will automatically execute the line of code. It will only stop if the condition that you set becomes false. Okay? And then do while. Loops through a block of code once and then repeats the loop as long as the specified condition is true. Basically, it's the same thing. First, it's going to loop once, and then if the condition is still true, then it will loop again, and then it will loop again until the condition is becomes false. And then for loops through a block of code a specified number of times. So ang while o do while will loop automatically unless the statement or the condition is true. The for loop will imong iset og kapila siya mobalik. Mura bag i-manual nimo check, manual nimo set og kapila siya mobalik. Kung ang while loop mobalik-balik siya automatically bisag kapila siya basta kay true ang imong condition. For the loop, it will loop only for the specified number of times. So if hindi mo siyang giloop na 10 times ra, 10 times po siya kuto. Alright? And then for each, it loops through a block of code for each element in an array. Alright? So perhaps we're not going to be using the for each too much. We're going to focus more on the while and for. Okay? So that's going to be our discussion today for the while and for. And then you can learn more about do while and for each on your own. Or if in our future lesson may encounter natin ni sila, then I'm just going to discuss it to you individually. Would that be okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So for today, we're only going to
Yes,
discuss
sir.
the while and
Yes,
for
sir.
loops. Okay, let's proceed. Okay. The while loop loops through a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. Again, ang while loop will only repeat the execution if the condition that you set remains true. If it's false, then that's the time that it will stop. Alright? So the syntax is you're going to write while and then the condition that you're going to set and the code to be executed. That means if this condition here nga imong ibutang diri remains true, kani siya magbalik-balik ra jud siya nga code. That is the purpose of while. So for example, displays the numbers from 1 to 5. We are going to create a program, or we're going to create a PHP program that will display a number from 1 to 5. Right? So this is how we're going to write it. So we're just going to copy it. First is we're going to create a variable. Let's call it x. Variable x is equals to 1. That is our first number. Now, we're going to create a condition na automatic siyang mo-create mo kutob siya og 5. Nana ba? So we will write while and then x is less than or equals to 5. So if our x is less than or equals to 5, then this code will automatically be executed. First is it will display the number is and then x plus plus. Unsay pasabot kani og plus plus? Unsay pasabot og plus plus again?
Increment, sir.
Increment. Yes, it will add 1, right? So in this example, our first value is 1. Diba? That's true. So it will display the number as 1. But here, the x is incremented. What happens to our value? Kung sa mahitabo sa 1, mahimo siyang again, our variable x is 1. And it says here nga kung ang variable x is less than or equals to 5, this will be executed. And after this will be executed, it will increment. So what will happen to 1? Kung ma-increment ang 1, unsay mahitabo sa 1? Unsay value sa 1? Yes, mutaas. Unsa lang na? Again, our value is x, and if we're going to increment it, unsay value sa x? Unsa lan? Mahimo siyang
1, sir. 1, sir.
Isa.
1.
okay, again, our variable here is 1.
One.
So, the condition here, kung ang variable is less than or equals to 5, which is 1, that is true, then it will display the number is, and then the value which is 1. After iyang i-display ang value, naay code diri nga mo execute og increment. Bali, ang value sa x, iyang i-increment. Unsay pasabot og increment?
Sir.
Mo-add siya og 1. Diba? Now, since gi-increment nato ang x, unsa nay value sa 1? Mahimo siyang? Mahimo
sir.
siyang 2. Alright? Okay, that's it. Because gi-increment man nato, i-addan man nato og 1. So therefore, ang x mahimo siyang number 2. Mahimo siyang 2. Now, it will check. Is 2 still less than or equals to 5? Is it still true? Atong x, ang x nahimo na siyang 2. Is it? Alright, so it's
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
so true. So
Yes, sir.
therefore, this will still be executed, di ba? Because true pa man gyapon siya. Now, since gi-execute na niya ni, and then this time, iyan na pong i-add. Kay mag-loop man siya, magbalik-balik man. So, mo-increment na po siya. So, what happened to our x? Unsa na iyang value ron? Mahimo
3, sir.
siyang?
3.
Mahimo 3.
3,
Alright?
sir.
And
3.
the cycle continue. It will go back to the while, and it will check, is 3 less than or equals to 5?
True, sir.
Yes, sir.
True. Therefore,
sir.
i-execute na po niya ni, and then, add na po niya usa. So, mahimo siyang
4.
4, and then
4.
it will check, is 4 less than or equals to 5?
Yes, sir.
True. Therefore, mo execute na po siya, mabalik na po siya diri, and then increment. So 4 becomes
5.
5, and then it will check na po. Is 5 is less than or equals to 5?
Yes,
False,
sir.
sir.
True.
Equal,
So
sir.
therefore,
True, sir. True.
execute gani po niya. And so this time, mahimo siyang
6.
ang
6.
6. So it will check, is 6 is less than or equals to 5?
False.
False, sir.
False. Okay? And then since while, ang di ba ang atong definition is that if the condition is false, then it will stop the loop. Alright, so let's try that. Let's copy and paste it. Nag-gets na yung idea sa sa while loop. So
Yes, sir.
again,
Yes, sir.
it will continue. Basically magbalik-balik ra siya, mag-cycle ra sige ang kung mogan gitawag siya loop, kay magbalik-balik ra ang iyahang code until such time that the condition that you set becomes false. So let's change it to while. and then let's paste it right here. So again, we have x, our initial value is 1, and then it will check whether 1 is less than or equals to 5, and then execute this. And this block of code will continue to be executed until such time that our condition becomes false. That means if mo reach na siya og 6. So let's save that and let's open it up. And let's call in while loop.php. Here, ni-loop siya. First is, ni-butang siya og the number is 1. And then, ni-increment siya og 2. Nahimo siyang 2. And then, ni-increment na po siya. Nahimo siyang 3, 4, and then 5. And then, it stopped because this time, ang value of x nahimo siyang 6. So, ni-stop na siya. Alright? So, let's try another example. What if we're going to increase it to, let's say, 10? So obviously, this will continue. The loop will continue until such time nga mo reach na siya og number 10. That's it. Ana. So this time, if wala ko ga loop, magsikog balik-balik og write ani nga code, di ba? Magsikog balik-balik og write ani na code. But since I'm using the while loop and no longer have to constantly repeating the same code, the lines of code all over again, I am just instructing the program to repeat the codes for me until such time that the limit is reached. So that is while loop. Okay? Okay, let's have another example. Okay, so basically it's not only for numbers. We can also use it for text, something like that, because ang text, for example, characters A, B, C, D, naram Japon siya order, di ba? From A, B, C, D. So we can also use that. For example, we will say the value of x is A, and then we're going to create a while that displays, and then we're going to limit it to kuan. It will continue executing the code until such time nga mo reach siya og, let's say, J. Alright, so that means it will continue writing A, B, C, D up until J. So we're just going to ano lang, save that, and then let's reload. So again, we have here variable x is A, and then we're going to create a loop that will continue writing A, B, C through J. Alright, let's see. Let's save that, and then let's reload. Tada. So it will say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, because our condition here says that if it's gonna be less than J. So that means J, A, B, C up to I, diba? So basically that does not only apply with numbers, it will also apply to text or characters. Okay, let's have another example. Nangita ko example sa internet para madali. Alright, let's have another example. Wala akong makitaan. So, let's change the value. For example, let's set the initial value to 8, sorry, 2. Okay? And we're going to create a condition that basically the code will or basically the loop will continue to be executed until such time nga mo reach ang value of, let's say, 100. Right? So let's set let's remove the double quotation. Let's say, let's have another code here. So we'll add variable x plus, let's say, we're going to add it by itself. So we're going to display variable x plus variable x, and then kana lang. Sorry, let me fix it real quick. So we have here variable x is equals to variable x plus variable x. So that means it will, for example, our initial value is 2. So, and then inside our loop, we're going to add it by itself. So, for example, if it's 2, then if we're going to add 2, then the x becomes 4, right? And then here, since it's going to loop, then the 4 will be added another 4. It becomes 8. And then 8 plus 8, na ba? So, mag-loop siya. So, we'll try to check that. BR. And then let's reload. Here, it says here 1128 less than 100. Naabot siya og 128. Let's give it 200 na lang. Okay, malapo siya. But anyway, so here it is. We have x. Our initial value is 2. This is an example exponential value, by the way. So our condition here is it will going to continue looping this execution unless the value of x becomes 200. So we have here 2 is equals to 2 plus 2. That means our variable x becomes 4. And then since it's loop, then the 4 will add another, will be, okay. Since it is loop, then the variable x becomes 4. Now if we're going to add another 4 to it, mahimo siyang 8. Then sunod, mahimo pa siyang 16, so on and so forth until such time that it's going to stop. Okay? So that is an example of while loop. The while loop will only, basically the condition will, or the loop will continue to be executed until such time that the value is reached. Kung mahimo na false ang condition. Did you get it, guys? Did you follow?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So for the do while loop, I'm just gonna let you study it yourself, by yourself. Hopefully, mo study jud mo. But basically, it's almost the same thing. But here it is. Let me just show it to you as an example. We have here x is we have x is 1, and then for the do, this number is, and then increment, and then it will just, basically it's the same thing. It's just how it's being written. So let's try that. Let's go into copy and paste it. Kana. So it's the same thing. It's just there not a difference, but I'm not going to discuss it thoroughly. You can just study it yourself para madali ta. Let's proceed to the for loop. Now, remember that the difference between the while and the for loop is that sa while, continue siya, wala siya limit og kapila siya mo loop, basta kay true ang condition. The while loop will only stop if the condition becomes false. Basically, that's it. For loop, however, you're going to set og kapila siya mobalik. You're going to set it yourself if kapila siya mo loop. And then it will only stop the loop if ma-reach na tong imuhang limit. So that's the difference between the for loop and the while loop. So for the for loop is used when you know in advance how many times the script should run. So basically, if you know how if you know how long will unsa kataas ang kapila nimo balik-balikon ang loop, then you're going to use for. So for example, this would be useful for example, kana mo enroll mo sa 'di ba kanang sa load slip ba? So if sayo mo nakapa-enroll section A mo, kabantay man na section A, but if ulahin na mo nga mo pa-enroll, may mo mabutang mo sa laing section. Why is that? Basically, that is using loops that for the system na itong ginayos para sa enrollment. But why do you think that is? Let me just play. Ano lang? It's because each subject, each section rather, is given a limit. Gibutang siya limit. So for our class tong before sa pandemic, each section, especially sa major subjects like this one that we're taking, each subject should only have 25 students. Now, kung wala pa na 25 students, then i-add siya sa lain nga section. So that is using loop. And since the programmer know that the limit is 25, then it uses he or kinsay programmer or kinsay ga manage sa website, gamit siya og for loop. So since kabalo man siya og pilay limit nga kinahanglan. So since there are only 25 limit for each section, then it's going to create for loop that only limits for up to 25 students. So for loop will be used if you already know in advance pila kapila nimo balik-balikon ang execution sa program. Okay? So how to write a for loop? So first is you're going to write the initial counter, and then the test counter, and the increment counter. So what that means? The initial counter initialize a loop counter value. So mo siya ang pinakauna ni mga value. It could be either 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically your initial value kumbaga. And then the test counter evaluate for each loop iteration. If it evaluates to true, the loop continues. If it evaluates to false, the loop ends. So basically, diyan nimo ibutang ang imong condition. So what will happen to the initial value? Are you going to add like 3, or are you going to add 2? Are you going to add 1? Something like that. Barabag ug unsa imong ganahan o pila ang increment kumbaga. And then the increment counter increases the loop counter value. Bali. Ang test counter would be the last die. Sorry, bali ako ang explanation. Ang test counter is ug unsa imong limit. Pila ang limit nga imong butang. For example, 25 students. Then for the test counter, you're only going to you should write that the value should only be, or the number of students must only be less than 25, less than or equals to 25. All right, and then the increment counter is how many or how much are you going to add to each of the initial value. So pwede nimo adan ba nimo ra siya 1, 2, 3 until such time nga mo reach og 25, or you're going to add 2 any other number so long as mo reach siya og 25 students. All right, so I'm not sure if you get that because wala di na ako ma-explain tarong, but let me just show it to you in an example. Let me create a new file here. Let's call it for loop.php, and then we're going to write for loops. All right, so for example, we're going to create a variable students. Number of students lang, number underscore students. Dito na lang, dito sa tag 4. We're going to create a 4, and then first is we're going to set the initial value. The initial value is let's call it number of student is equals to 1. So, initial value sa student is 1 radyo na. Isa radyo na kabuo. Now, the second, which is the test counter, we're going to set the limit. For example, we're going to set the limit na maka-enroll ra student is 25. So, we're going to create here the test value number student is equals to, is less than or equals to 25. That means we're only going to limit the students from 1 to 25 students only. Now, for the second one, for the third one is the increment counter. So every time that we're going to count the students, is it going to be count once, about 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 4, 6, 8, or 3, 6, 9, something like that. So obviously, so if we're going to count student, obviously it would be 1 by 1, diba? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore, we're going to write number of student plus plus. All right. So first is we set the initial number of student, which is only 1, and then we set the limit, which is only less than or equals to 25, and then what would kapila nato siya i-count, either once or nana ba? So the increment value. So this time we're just going to add plus 1 data. Sige, magsige tag plus 1 until such time that we reach 25. And then we write the code here, echo student 1, and then break line. This is just an example. Ano lang, let's save that, and then let's check it. Uy. Sa error. Hold on, guys. Okay. Alright. Wala na di ay semicolon ng end. Apologies. So we're only going to add semicolon for the initial value, for the test value, but no longer semicolon on the increment value. Let's try to reload. Tada. Okay. Kanila mo tayo student. How many students? Let's save that. Let's reload. Alright, so here it is. So right now, we were able to display 25 students. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Alright? So that means we're able to enroll. Obviously, wala tayong mga names of students here, but basically this is just a counter. So we're able to write 25 students and all. So the difference between the while loop and the for loop is that while loop, it will stop, or basically the loop will continue and will only stop if the condition is false. But for loop, you're going to set the value. You're going to set the value yourself. Alright, let's have another example. Okay. This example below displays numbers from 0 to 10. So first is we set the initial value to 0, and we set the limit to 10, less than to or equal to 10 only, and then the increment value is x plus plus. That means from 0 plus 1, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1, so on and so forth. So we're going to copy this, and then we'll paste it right here. We're going to reload, and now. Alright, so that will be all. Do you have any questions, guys?
Answer.
Sure. Okay. That is our lesson took exactly 2 hours, so that's good. So I will be giving you an assessment that will be instead nga ato i-take ron, but since it's already 11, that will be good up until 6 p.m. again. So here it is. Allow me to show to you. Tara. So this time, however, you'll only be working on the while loop lang. While loop. I'm sorry, not while loop, but if-else statement. So you're going to write a PHP program to input marks of 5 subjects like physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and computer programming. Calculate percentage and grade according to the following. So what are you going to do is you're going to perhaps you're going to write the student's name. So the student name will be your name lang. Expected output rather. Write it on a notepad para maklaro. How are you going to work with your assessment activity? So you're going to write it this way. First is you're going to write the name of student. And then, for example, Juleus Publico. And kamo na bahalag pila yung hatag nga grade sa inyong kaugalingon. So, for example, sa programming, let's say physics. And then we have chemistry, biology, mathematics, computer programming. Alright, so what you're going to do is you're going to assign pilay grade sa physics. So for example, if ang physics niya is let's say 89, and then chemistry is let's say 85, biology let's say 75, and then mathematics kay 80, and then programming is let's say 90. So depending on the value that you're going to set for each subject. So if it's 89, so here for percentage greater than or equals to 90, it will display grade A. So dire nimo ibutang ang imuhang if else statement. So if it's 89, then asa siya mabilong? Dire sa atong dire asa siya mabilong nga grade?
Grade B.
Okay, grade B. Kaya ang nakabutang sa dire kay greater than or equals to 80, it will display grade B. Ano na ba? So dire na ibutang ang if else statement. If it's gonna be 89 or 80 and above, it will display grade B. And this time the 85, asa siya mabilong? The same thing, grade B. And then for biology 75, asa siya nabilong?
C.
Grade C. Ayun na lang mo tayo grade, ano lang, B na lang, B. Or kamo rin bahala sa ano niyo. Basta kay ganahan ko ma-display ang A, B, C na. Asa siya nabilong nga group. And then an 80, same thing, B. And then 90 is A. Ano. So,
Nice example output, sir.
muna example ng output. So, you have name of student, imuhang ngalan ang ibutang, of course. And then, you're going to write physics, the value for physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, computer programming. Kamo na bahala kung sa inyong initialize na value. It would be totally up to you. So, for example, if it's gonna be 89, then it should display B. Automatic siya mo create og value if it's A, B, or C, or D, or F, depending on the grade that you've given. Alright? Make sure to use the if-else statement, guys, okay? Dili ganahan nga, inyo ra pong i-echo ra po ninyo ang A, B, C. Make sure to use the if-else statement. Do you have any question with the assignment? With the assessment, rather? Nagets ra ang assignment? Alright. So, I'm going to give it, sige, instead of 6 p.m., I'm going to give it to you until midnight. Kaya medyo dako-dako siguro ng assignment, ang assessment. I'm going to give it to you up until 12 in the evening para dili siya matag as late. Then, any other, if malate na gani, kaya since this is an assessment, siguro tagaan na mo, no, dapat wala unta, if malate gani, I'm not going to give it any grade, okay? Because this is an assessment activity. And we all know na makasabit ra gihapon mo even if it's late. But since this is an assessment activity, there should be no late. If in case mabutang dito sa Google Meet, Google Classroom nga late, meaning you have no, wala, dili na siya. Di na ako siya accept. Unless, if it's gonna be assignment, which I will upload later on, If it's assignment, okay rag malate because assignment. But since this is assessment activity, there should be no late. Do you understand?
Sir.
Okay, graduhan rin ako tong dili malate. Makasubmit ka online. Kaya assessment activity. Alright, so please take a screenshot para di maglibog kaya wala na gibutang dire. This is gonna be the example output. Example output. You might want to take a screenshot now para ma-move sa itsura sa inyong program. Alright, are you done?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, let me start.